calling from Los Angeles, and I'm having a little problem under the name ThatUmbrellaGuy. I sent him my phone number at least 20 times in the chat and told him to call me. He ignored me. I'm a man. I filed the report. If you guys could take a look at it and give me a call back, I would love to hear what you guys can do to help us. We really need to kind of stop this guy at least until Monday. I told him to call me. I'm a man.
All right, man, today was a day that we all knew would happen sooner or later. Oh, man, this one's a big one. I mean, this one is definitely a big one. And remember, when we talk about this subject today, remember, anyone, this is my opinion, anyone that is an active contributor to this cancellation of people based on accusation alone. They say that that proves guilt. Well, when things come up and we talk about them, remember, we're looking at what they themselves would call guilty. So just using their own settings. It's always astounding though when you look at these horrible accusers sometimes, the things that they do, the damage they try to do, and then you see the skeletons. Many of the skeletons are bad. What's up, Fallen Hero? Thank you for the gifted membership there. Now, the guy we're going to be talking about today, I want to give you a reminder of him. This is Dan Wooten. Dan Wooten, he has had a lot of things. We'll talk about one of his other things that happened anyway. Carolyn Flack. That was a mess. A horrible, horrible mess. He allegedly, I'm going to say, caused somebody to, let's say, go to their end. What's fascinating about it, too, is this same guy that has done so much damage to other people didn't like it when the ex-significant other, or this, I don't even know how to put that. I'm going to say significant other still, even though she's gone. They were still their significant other when it happened, so I'll still call them that. Their significant other, they accused Wooten. They talked about him, they went outside his home, all kinds of stuff. They made sure the world saw it. And you know how Wooten responded to that? Responded by getting stalking orders against them. Dan Wooten, I mean, this is one of the worst people out there, but he's the one that caused all of the UK episode. He was the direct cause. What's up, Denise Clark, Custom Art? Thank you for the 5 gifted memberships, by the way. Thank you. I love seeing you too. Thank you there. Romer, thanks for 5. Man, your granddad passed away today. Appreciate the time you have with your family. Yeah. No, man, that's good. I'm situations like that suck. I remember when my granddad passed away. He passed away younger than 92. But dude, you got a lot of friends. If you need anything, obviously, don't hesitate. And grieving is normal. But if you need somebody to talk to, you have friends. And again, if you need more than that, always professional reach. If there's not someone in your region like that, you can do that. There are places you can contact. So Dan Wooten, you can see his posts about this too. He went after what he wanted. He wanted J.K. Rowling and the entire industry, Hollywood, but specifically, you can tell he aimed specifically at Depp's career, hoping that this would bury him. And now you'll notice today too. 1 second. You'll notice that there's really not a lot of tabloid coverage over this, which is not surprising. I'm not surprised by that at all at the end of the day, but it is telling when one of their own, let me see. I want to show you this article just genuinely happy, and then we'll talk about his fall because again, he was more than happy to join up with Me Too. Now, another thing has changed recently, and it's actually a big change too. For the longest time, Dan Wooten would have been protected because of the type of victim he had. His identity would have shielded him, but I think that's becoming less prevalent. You look at Kevin Spacey, for example. Kevin Spacey, tried to use identity. He tried to say, oh, well, I came out. His trial's going on right now, by the way. There's some stuff in there that doesn't look very good for Kevin Spacey, but we'll see. It all boils down to how everything presents. But, and the former trial will probably help him out too. But I mean, that, bringing that up, I bring it up because Dan Wooten, the type of victim he has, again, it's always shielded him. And it's always allowed him to put together articles like, give me 1 second, like the Depp one. And I think this is important to note because the people who fall, that have put this stuff together, yeah. So here's the article that kicked off everything in the UK. Again, how could she be genuinely happy casting him? Of course, it was in the title. If you look up the title, you saw the overlay that I was using. The overlay, they went in and they tried to sanitize it because they were afraid there might be some kind of 1 second, I'm trying to adjust that there. They thought there might be some something they might have to pay. There might be a real cost. And so they went from this to, when you look now, you find the other version. This is the one you run across, But read this with me real quick. And then, like I said, I love the fall of these folks. So it's good to see what they've done because you have to understand he set the stage for his own cancellation. All right. So for a holier-than-thou, Twitterati preacher, J.K. Rowling tries to present herself as a leading light for women in the entertainment industry. But the author will need to use every trick in the Harry Potter magic book to handle the growing outrage in Hollywood over her decision to stand by the casting of J.D. in the lead role in her precious Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them franchise. Talking about 2, then. That's what this was. Today, I reveal a significant backlash from within. So he's trying to weaponize. This is the very thing that you'll notice this too. A lot of people that are accusers or quote unquote, this bothers me. I've noticed this quite a bit. And this is not this is not every person that uses that by any stretch of the imagination, but have you noticed how many people that use words like ally? I'm an ally of. How many of them are actually wolves in proverbial sheep's clothing? Have you noticed that? There are a lot of people out there that maintain that, whatever they're an ally to, it doesn't matter what it comes up. They're some of the worst offenders possible. This is a guy that was supposed to be an ally and behind the scenes. Well, there are a lot of allegations. So anyway, the Time's Up movement, and remember too, Time's Up movement has been exposed as a fraud since this. That's pretty ironic as well, isn't it? Also, it's fascinating when they would throw this on here. You notice that he didn't note anywhere whatsoever that there was already establishment with Amber Heard, even before any lawyer connection. And then after that, of course, you have the establishment of lawyer connection and more. But because of Scott is hell-bent on backing her famous pal, despite his clearly inexcusable behavior toward his ex-wife, AH. Rowling is proving herself to be the worst type of Hollywood hypocrite here. Her claim that she is genuinely happy to have him star as his, of course, Dark Wizard, Grindelwald, in her big-budget film, Fantastic Beasts, Crimes of Grindelwald, provides him total rehabilitation in the eyes of the movie industry. And that's actually not true at all. Not true at all. That's an absolute garbage narrative. But still, it's the narrative. And again, this is the reason I'm looking at this is because we are setting the stage for the self-cancellation of a person down the road. It's always fitting. So when I note these accusations, I want you to remember something. We have to believe them. That's the rules to the game, right? Listen and believe. Not listen and verify, trust, whatever. That's their rules. Ghost, thanks for the 10 by the way. Oh my gosh, just got on. I miss you. Hey, good to see you. Sending some love to you and your family. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you got in too, by the way. So she is condoning behavior that she would be loudly slamming on social media if it were a male executive making the same decision. Again, what if it were a journalist, for example? So let me be very clear for the benefit of any apparently unaware Miss Rowling. Overwhelming evidence. Yeah, she ends up losing an actual case face-to-face, JD versus AH, not one against the Sun, where essentially, again, they just take the word of. You actually have to provide stuff in the court of law and in the court of public opinion. It overwhelmingly didn't go her way, but was filed to show JD engaged in DV against her. She was granted a restraining order after alleging that JD accosted her following a drunken argument, submitted photographs, etc., backed up by numerous friends. Yeah, we got to know all of them pretty well, too. Recounted a detail of, I'm going to say, well, no, I guess I could go with domestic instance. I'll go with a shortening, but that works. Some of which, like for her fearing her life, kicks, punches, shoves, all-out assaults. There have been many high-powered friends accused AH of simply seeking a payout. She proved them wrong. See how wrong this is? By the way, they never correct that. She donated. She donated. Now they changed it up. It's committing to donate now. It's that. I love how they go in and revise stuff. They were like, no, we never didn't fact check that. Again, it's funny to go back to these and to see how they were like, yeah, and they did edit this stuff, Sun's slimy anyway. The Sun actually has been involved in false accusing a few people. One of them, they actually falsely accused as a serial ender, There was they've accused people of there was a guy who was eclectic. He was a bit odd, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there was a very unfortunate incident with a high profile case, and that man was falsely accused by 3 runaway tabloids. One of them was the Sun. They've done that before. And now, just like any other place, they like to ghost edit. They like to set that. They love to pretend. So if Rowling is the supporter of women's rights she claims, has she been blinded by her personal friendship with Depp? Right there. Oh, again, the hypocrisy. Again, listen and believe, baby. After all, she coveted him enough to have spent $22 million buying his old yacht, which he had ironically renamed for AH. Rawlings a powerful figure who likes to slaughter anyone who dares to publicly question her morals or decisions. But today's two brave members of Me Too are Time's Up, both victims of Harvey Weinstein, go public to question her decision. Now remember, there was some real outrage about being included in this stuff. And they didn't change that. They ghost edited things about charity, but they were more than willing to use they do this stuff, by the way. They use victims of. You'll see this a lot with Epstein victims. They become fodder for any other thing. And I try to reserve my commentary for Hollywood celebrities, the shills, not people who have been through horrible situations like, say, the Epstein issues. They, being manipulated, yeah, that's the intent of a lot of this stuff. So you can see the statements here. That again, these statements, well, they caused problems. I'm not going to go through all of that. So Dan published 5 questions. Do you take DV accusations as seriously as harassment, given your support of Me Too? If so, do you believe AH's detailed 2016 court filing detailing accosting by JD, which included pictures, Why did JD agree to pay $5 million as a settlement, including a confidentiality agreement? If there was no truth to why did he agree to a divorce? I mean, what a stupid fucking thing to say. You admitted last year there were legitimate questions about his casting. What were these and how did you overcome them? AH appeared to suggest on Instagram that you had taken her divorce statement out of context in order to defend JD's casting. Have you spoken to her directly? Warner Brothers releases the fronted film in November. While Rowling has the inability to ever admit she's made a mistake, it's not too late for a last-minute recast. You see this. This is a call for cancellation. Again, same guy makes this statement. So we come to today. Now, today has a lot, and I do mean a lot, to add. Now, I want to read you, first of all, somebody's very public account of Mr. Wooten. Then we'll go over some other stuff that came up too. But again, remember, by default, according to the old rules that Dan Wooten himself set down, this is all true. According to Dan Wooten, that's how I'm supposed to take it. I'm supposed to take this as gospel. Again, that's how listen and believe works. When you get accused, don't flinch, baby. Don't flinch because everything's true. So, and I shouldn't have to decide. People will talk about their values, and I understand that, by the way, very much. I get that. The thing is, Dan Wooten should cancel himself. It's just straight up. Dan Wooten should cancel himself. Let me adjust this real quick. Sorry, I didn't notice my screen. That's what always bothers me with that. It shouldn't be a question of, how do you see that? It is how they perceive it. Did I robot for a minute? All right, give me a second. Robot. Hey, let me close out that stupid freaking. All right, did that help now? Yeah, I'm trying to see if it stopped. Did that fix the robot? I'll have to close out a couple of things. I opened a Sun article, so that's like giving my computer a disease. Let me close a few things. Yeah, okay. It was the Sun article. The Sun article caused it. Like, no joke. Isn't that messed up, by the way? Yeah, my fault. It is, and what's funny is I opened it up under a browser with I wouldn't have done it. Usually I'll pull it up under archive, which is not as bad. But yeah, I'm like, sorry, computer. You know, give it some penicillin shots. Yes, for sure. You could hear my mouse clicking in robot. Indeed. That's right. It was. All right. So this came up. This is after I'll read you the accusations and stuff, but I want you to get this firsthand account here because this is, So I know this, talking about Wooten's, how he treats men, what he does, how he bullies, and more. I know this because I went out with Dan Wooten between late 2009 and early 2013. Do tell. The worst period of my entire life, where I was stalked by him to the point he had all the passwords for my social media accounts and emails without my permission until I caught him out. I don't know if that's I caught him or I called him out. Maybe that's a mix of that. Maybe that's what it means. I caught him and you know, look at the traction on this stuff today too. Like this is another point on everything. And this is earlier today when the screenshot was gathered. Somebody grabbed this and threw it to me. I'd seen part of this come up, but yeah, I appreciate them doing that because I was working and I couldn't. If you find something in the day that's crazy, not like bickering weirdos, although if they're making like horrible, threats and stuff, yeah, I'll take those. Like I'm talking to, they're like, yeah, I got to get a firearm because pow pow baby or something. That's one thing. But if you're seeing something like this, oh yeah. So I appreciate you folks sending it. So this continues. Now look how much attention again. Almost 500,000 views. It's well over that by now because it's getting started. It's a lot of fun there. You have 94 quotes, 660 retweets, over 3,500 freaking likes, and people are bookmarking it. They're keeping it for later. I would be one of those people, by the way, that would bookmark this stuff. I always keep up with it. What's up, Mary? Thank you for the 2 months and the umbrellas. Love those umbrellas. So, when I found that my Gmail account was being regularly accessed from the News of the World office where he worked at the time. So he's not only, this is a fascinating thing, and we've heard this a few times, by the way. We've seen this from, some pretty nasty people. I talked about, you remember the lady that, God, I can't think of her name. Rebecca. God, I can't think of her name. Somebody tell me in the chat. You know, the lady that went to back and forth with the state of Florida. She essentially, it was over beer bug stats. There was a back and forth about what happened. And then you found out, hey, she had been stalking this guy, this student. She'd been fired over after threatening the roommate. She had released like photographs and everything else. Rebecca Jones. Thank you. I couldn't think of her last name. Jones. So that reminds me of what Rebecca Jones was doing, because one thing that you found out through the whole Rebecca Jones thing is that she was, no matter what again, I know that is a very political topic. It was a very politically backed thing. But no matter what you thought on that subject, one thing we found out is that she was using work resources. She was using the state of Florida's work resources to harass somebody, to go in and harass their job. She was calling, she was sending emails, and there you are. I mean, you have again accusation is substantiation. I mean, J.K. Rowling, I'd like to ask, what do you think about Dan Wooten, by the way? Maybe somebody should ask her that. Maybe somebody with a large platform. Since she decided, to go in and say, well, you aren't a real feminist unless. That's what he was saying. You don't back hashtag Me Too unless. Isn't it funny how that works out, right? I was an idiot, though, and allowed myself to be emotionally bullied into not leaving him. But then I found out more. While Dan was in New Zealand visiting his family, I stayed at his flat and cat sit. And one day while doing the laundry, I found a hold all stuffed down the back of the washing machine. It was locked with a padlock. Wouldn't that be weird, by the way? You're going through, you're putting stuff together, you're kind of, again, you're cat sitting your significant other, you know, and behind everything. I'm not saying you shouldn't, everyone has something, I'm sure, that is theirs. So, but if I found that, I'd be like, what the world? Again, stuffed behind the washing machine, I mean, okay. So they're curious about what was inside. And I found an external hard drive. Huh. On it, I found a video of one of Dan's supposed friends, a Sun employee, having sex with his boyfriend. Here, I need to give me a second. I mean, that's nuts. The video was clearly made in secret, hidden camera. So sounds like maybe running across something again. Got to take it for gospel. So got to take it as a 1 second. BTR. To take it as 100% gospel on it. Like I said, here, there's more of it. All right, here it is. Let me pull the rest of this up. Sorry. I appreciate the person who sent it to me too, because sometimes stuff like this will ghost out. You'll have somebody understandably deleted. They may be threatened. I mean, okay. What you would have with this now? I would fully expect some litigation. That might be fun too. Oh my God, I hope Dan Wooten gets dragged into court and asked about all of the craziness, because this is career killer is what you look at. This is getting enough attention right now that's going to be very hard to ignore, okay? It's going to be very hard to ignore. But they're saying too, an employee. Now, one of the accusations, which we will read in just a moment, is that his prior employers, Sun say what? They were protecting him while a lot of sordid stuff was going on. There were accusations of bullying. There was one, again, we'll look at what this comes from, but there was one employee that was supposedly moved to another area, so Dan Wooten wouldn't be around them anymore. And there were accusations of payoff money, because Dan Wooten, he has a large platform. I mean, for the longest time, he was able to destroy anyone. The problem for people like Wooten is this: when you have that platform and you have things like this, they're going to get you. They will get you sooner or later. The Carolyn Flack stuff should have ended his career, honestly. That should have been the end, but it wasn't. Hey, Rosemary, thanks for 10. I feel so stupid. I know I've heard you talk about Wooten many times, but I was not connecting his name to one of the people on GBN. Yeah, I liked him because he mocks the Sussex. Yeah, it goes back to the old adage of a broken clock and being right twice a day. I mean, you can have some of the worst people ever pick up on something and be correct. But, again, oh man, like I said, the things that are alleged. So let's continue this. In the same folder as I found the video, I found a transcript of an MSN conversation between the colleague's partner and someone called Martin Branning, whereby an arrangement was indeed made to make the sex tape in secret without the colleague's knowledge in exchange for £500. Holy crap. So Wooten not only, again, you got to take it as gospel because he's a listening believer. So not only records in secret another employee And a lot of the accusations say that he goes after younger employees too, that he harasses younger male employees. And again, that's been something that for a longest time. Again, it was this thing where the media would not cover that stuff at all because they were afraid. And I'll tell you, like, honestly, it also deals with its identity, but it's also male victims. Male victims, will get a shake. I mean, it was crazy. You had, you remember that expert witness in the AH trial? She was like, yeah, if I have a relationship, like a same-sex relationship, a man accused of, well, obviously there can be a man that's a victim. So you have to admit that a man can be a victim. And unfortunately, yeah, they're not really there. So I knew instantly that Martin Branning was Dan. Huh. You caught that, right? So there's a conversation between colleague's partner and Dan, according to them. Dan kept his transcript. Instead of burning the sucker or anything else, he decided, like, that's messed up on so many levels because it says something about the person that, would do that. Not only would they make that arrangement, but beyond that, they would keep the transcript. They would keep a trophy of it. So I finally got the courage to get out of the relationship. And a couple of months after leaving him, I randomly bumped into a guy I had briefly dated around the time that I met Dan in a bar. So he's running in, that's the way that's worded, it's clunky, but he runs into this person in a bar. He asked me what was happening in my life. So I told him about the breakup. And the first thing that he asked me, without me saying a word about it, was, what's the deal with this Martin Branning guy? That's weird, right? I mean, that would be really strange, You found out this secret. Again, it was locked behind a washing machine, kept out of view. You would think there wouldn't be a lot of notice of that, but the name comes up again. This name that, yeah. So let's continue. How does that come up? Literally chilled me to the bone because it was the first time I'd ever heard anyone else say the name out loud. It was equally disturbing as my first discovery. Martin Branning had been messaging this guy, encouraging him to try and hook up and make sex videos with several people, including one of my long term ex boyfriends and Dan himself, for money. I was just messaging people and, like, hey, want to get some frisky? That's kind of, He had no idea that Martin Branning was nothing more than an alias and that he was chatting online with Dan Wooten himself using a fake profile. Now, I want to make something clear too. If you are an adult and you're hooking up with consensual adults, you're doing whatever. I mean, some of that can be a novelty and be like, wow, that's pretty jacked up. But this is setting kind of a behavioral outline, And it's talking about, again, that tape. Again, if you're taping people without their knowledge or consent, and employees that you're working with, that's even. So he had no idea. You're talking with Dan using a fake profile. At that point, I knew that if I'd randomly bumped into one random person from my past who brought him up, that the Dan Martin thing went much, much further. And I was right. Fast forward to February 2020 and the night that Caroline Flack died. I didn't know her, but I'd met her once or twice through Dan, and she just seemed like an incredibly nice human being. Like many others, I was absolutely sickened by Dan's fake tears. And he does that a lot, by the way. There's been a lot of blowback about Dan Wooten fake tears. Him going grave sites, and I mean he's catching a lot of if you want an absolute shit show, I'll show you this in just a minute, but if you want an absolute shit show, you should go in and you should look at Dan Wooten's name. Just search it on Twitter and look at the results, because he is being decimated right now. Anyway, the fake tears over a death. So emboldened by a few drinks, I took to Twitter on my old account and told the story of what I had found in the holdall behind the washing machine over several tweets. Within a few minutes of the tweets going out, I was contacted by a mutual friend of mine, and who, on behalf of Dan, put a ton of pressure on me to take them down. And of course, you know that. Again, I fully expect, depending on what companies are named and what comes out, I do expect cease and desists, if nothing else. And what'll be amazing, and I tell you, the Sun, one of the things we're going to look at is a discussion about legal being contacted for the Daily Mail, and with the Daily Mail, them saying, outing somebody, talking about, things like this type of stuff happening, that it's not only confidential, but that kind of stuff shouldn't be discussed publicly. And you know why? Because they're fully capable of destroying other people's life. They're happy to do so, but they don't want anything blowing back on them. I mean, again, as a business, you understand why, but still, I mean, you talk about the hypocrisy, they should be cleaning house, but no, no, they don't. So, which regrettably scared about the consequences from Dan, because he is terrifying. I thought that was a fascinating statement too. Him, again, there's been accusations coming up, many of them talking about him just being a horrible bully. And you see what, again, these tabloids don't, you see what journalists, quote unquote journalists, like quote unquote tech journalists, people like a Kat Tenbarge or a Taylor Lorenz, what they're allowed to do. And they're in the mainstream media. When you get to the tabloid section, there's nothing. There is no limit. They don't worry about being sued. They're emboldened by the fact that at the end of the day, there's usually a cap on what they can be, what they can actually be held liable for. Usually, we're talking about a pretty insignificant amount of money, considering how much money you have to spend to get them to that level. So, you not only have to deal with that person, and you've seen their behavior, you see how they are, but you have to deal with the legal teams behind them. As one of their big stars, one of those big names associated with that. Again, I imagine that this person right here, depending on how much attention this gets, they will definitely get a threat from Dan Wooten. I would almost guarantee that they will get some kind of cease and desist, maybe some actual legal action. But beyond that, you may have current or ex-employer, because all these places, they have a legal team. A lot of businesses have legal teams. With tabloids, I mean, they spend a lot of time, by their very nature, they spend a lot of time getting in trouble. But anyway, so I take it down because Dan's terrifying. But I shared them because I knew if I did that someone would recognize the branding name, and I was right. They'd been seen, and shortly after, I received the following message from a former colleague of his who told me that he and a number of other colleagues from the Sun had been harassed by Martin Branning. So Dan Wooten was harassing his own colleagues, which is not surprising, by the way. I mean, again, you see what he'll do, but I mean, listen to these accusations. Let me, I've got to unshare and then share it again. So just give me 1 second. I'm blowing this up, okay? I'm blowing the image up so we can see it very good. So here's the image of it's not the entire text here, but listen. So, Alex, without prejudice, and please, strictly between us for now, I remember you sent me some pretty colorful messages back in the day, water under the bridge and all that. You mentioned the emails from Max. Like, give me a second here. Let me look at something real fast. So it's interesting. Max Martin, so it's M branding, I guess, that's being utilized there. All right. I just wanted to check that real quick. So here, let's see. I received messages asking me to do quote unquote private work for $10,000 tax free. Just pose nude, etc. Now, if you're doing that too, if you're if you're saying, oh, well, you come in, you're going to pose. First of all, if somebody offers you $10,000, they don't just want you to pose. I mean, just that's for real, because people in the adult industry, I saw them talking about how much they make. Many of them don't even make 1/10 of that. So there is something messed up about that. If somebody's offering you 10K, they are definitely not wanting you to just pose. They want more, and they're probably going to utilize it in some horrible way. So it has been causing a great deal of stress and upset for a number of people I know too. Felt like blackmail or entrapment. I showed my wife. She agrees it should go further. I have taken advice from police and lawyers. It was faceless until now. Would you be prepared to discuss? Obviously, understand. If not, I just can't let this go on if there are others suffering in silence. And then it cuts off with I'm shocked there. They cropped an image, they said, to protect the identity of the sender. So that's why you have cropping on there. And they make it clear I'll never, ever publicly reveal any of the names of the victims I know of without their explicit permission. So don't ask me. Since this all happened, I've spoke to other victims and several journalists, but for whatever reason, now you know the reason, by the way, you speak to journalists, they don't turn on their pals. They don't. They're worse than, you hear about the blue line, with people. Again, that is not a shot at all police either, just to make that clear. There are many good police out there, many bad ones too. There are people that will abuse authority, but you hear about the blue line, you can't finish it, if there's a really good if you want to see how bad that is, by the way, just to note this, there's a documentary called The 7-5. It talks about police corruption, huge scandal, huge one, but it shows you what level that protection will go at. Well, I personally think that journalists are much worse than that. They, in order to be the arbiter of truth, in order to have that angle and to do whatever, they have to circle the wagon and pretend that they're all professionals more. Even the tabloiders, even the Dan Wooten gets to fall in there. They protect monsters. They absolutely do, 100%. But anyway, so for whatever reason, fear of Dan's, litigiousness. Now that's interesting. I'm curious. I do know, again, Carolyn. So the Carolyn Flack stuff, if you look this up, I didn't know about this before all of this stuff started hitting. I knew about the Carolyn Flack story and what happened with Dan Wooten, but I did not realize that Dan Wooten had actually gone after the significant other for quote unquote stalking. I actually didn't realize that. I didn't follow it that far down the rabbit hole, but that's crazy. Because again, I mean, this is the same type of person that will go out and burn your life down, destroy everything in it, drive people to an ultimate end, and then they don't like that when they get blowback for something that they did. So Nancy New, thanks for the 5. Dan Wooten is Perez Hilton with a bigger platform and bigger backing cash-wise. Nasty piece of work. There are a lot, like, this is the modern face of quote-unquote journalism and a lot of the outlets too. Again, maybe you have some good reporter. There are a few reporter. I'm careful because there are a couple of reporters that I've seen that I think even if I disagree with what they say, which is okay. When you have an opinion, you look at information, you pull it up, you draw inference or opinion. When you're making an opinion piece, if you do that and you're honest about it, I respect that. Again, we don't have to agree on something, but in the modern face of journalism, for every one of those, there seem to be 10 Taylor Lorenzes or 10 Dan Wootens, you know? And they're not just in the places like the Sun or the Daily Mail. They're in the big establishment places, whether, the CNNs or the Foxes or just whatever. I mean, they have them as well. But litigiousness, fear of their jobs. And again, when you're going against somebody that is very well positioned in a company, yes, indeed. You being that's why the statements about going after junior workers or younger workers, it's not only a statement about age, it's a statement about the true power dynamic. That's why it's such a problem. When you get into when you get into any place of employment, when you have a person in a really prominent position, again, because at any time they can flex on it, then they can do whatever, and they can probably get you ghosted. And if they have enough power, the company itself, they will make payouts and hide what happened because they continue to make money from people like this. Wanting an easier life, again, you're dealing with a. We've seen that. We've seen that very high profile with a few people. It just makes your life easier to try to make them go away. Just to forget that this ever happened. We see that on the biggest stages. We see that, in everyday life. It's just easier to go along to get along. Toxic masculinity. Getting this story out has felt like the longest slog, but it needs to be out there. And I'm not deleting these tweets this time. Since 2020, I've personally spoken with the police about some incredibly serious allegations against Dan. Nothing came of it, but I shared details of everything I know, and I know others have spoken to the Met about things he has done, and so far it's gone nowhere. Now that's going to happen too. Just to be honest, if you're dealing with people with any type of prominence, here's one of the things, with investigations. Again, when you have accusation, first of all, at least you're putting it on record, all these things, and you should. I mean, this is how people should handle things. Now, if you're investigating, you're asking questions like this person is saying that they did it first. Okay, they weren't making an allegation saying, "Look at what this monster did to me," except for the password stuff, that kind of thing. They were talking about what they found and what they found out behind the scenes, and then with some of that, they made a police report. And you can do that. I mean, again, when it all blows up, that's also how you protect yourself too. Because if people find out that you were knowledgeable about it, you become one of Dan's enablers, whether that's fair or not, whether you were a victim behind the scenes, whether this person was terrible to you, you become one of those enablers too, just because that's the modern face of how this stuff works. But I've learned more about the abuse of colleagues who were bullied and paid off by News UK to protect their stars. So I'm going to read you something that is a non it's pointed out that it very much looks like it's about Dan Wooten, but it doesn't utilize that name. But it talks about payoffs. Now, he's saying specifically, yes, I know that indeed has taken place. There were indeed payoffs. That, again, if you see litigation, this will be the beautiful thing about this. Either Dan Wooten, this has a few outcomes. The public outcry is going to hit somehow. You're going to see some type of reaction. And if you get to see litigation, oh my God, litigation against Dan Wooten would open him up so much. If he brought any kind of case against some, my God, man, this person, I have no idea who Alex is, but I would I would go out of my way to make sure I shared or anything else and GoFundMe, because not just because of the thing with him trying to cancel other folks, but because Dan Wooten, there's so much stuff out there that I wonder what's there. And by default, again, Dan Wooten, listen and believe, I'm supposed to take all of that seriously. He set the stage for it. Have to go back to that. So to protect their star, until I guess he was no longer worth the investment of what was being spent to do so. I wonder what a payout is, by the way. I wonder how much you have to pay people to ensure their silence. When somebody is bullying you. I mean, we've seen, older companies like the Warner stuff where they fired people without cause and they end up paying a lot of money on the back end of it. So a lot of these places now will give you some money and get you to sign a non-disclosure agreement where you can never talk about that. Otherwise, they come after you hardcore. That's one of the nasty things about something like this. If people took money, especially if you're talking about an entry. I don't know if any of you have ever had to face off against an HR department, especially one with a big legal team. I've been around good places, jobs. I've been around some terrible places too, and irregardless, when you deal with, I've seen some very good PR, or I mean PR, HR people. But for every great HR people, I've seen some scary damn HR people because they always have. They come in with legalese. They come in with the legal department, especially if they know that they're wrong. Because a lot of people don't realize HR is not really there to protect you in most instances. I mean, there's some companies, again, HR is whatever. But if you deal with HR, one of their primary considerations is to protect the company. That's what they're there for. They do whatever is in the best interest of the company. So if somebody comes up with accusations and you need to bury them, they would come in with an army of lawyers. They'd come in with a lot of legal speak, and they would intimidate. Again, if you're talking about especially younger people getting into the job marketplace, it's nasty. It's part of that power dynamic. But just to be clear, I'm not alleging that his employers knew about everything I've tweeted about here. As I've said, I know many of his victims have not come forward, but they did know about at least some of the problematic behavior, and they protected him. Huh. Fascinating. And you'll have people, oh, well, that's convenient, right? Well, hey, Dan Wooten enjoys canceling other people. Fuck him. When you do that, it doesn't matter what's there. So let's look at the major item that kicked all of this off. All right. So there was actually a couple of statements. Let me find the original one. So the original one dealt with give me one second. All right, so here it is. Okay, so the original statement about Danny boy comes up right here. I put this in a video today. If you haven't checked the video out, you should, because everybody should see this. They need to know, and they need to know who Dan Wooten is. They need to understand that Dan Wooten is a fucking canceller of people. He is a listening believer. So by default, I'm not going to defend Dan Wooten. Fuck Dan Wooten. If you set this is the way I look at it. And again, you're welcome to disagree with it. If you are one of the people that engineered this culture of cancellation, reap the fucking whirlwind. It's your design. And when that tornado, see, here's the problem. You can't control a tornado or a hurricane. Sooner or later, those winds, they may blow your way too. And, when the big bad wolf comes and blows that little piggy's house away, well, I mean, that's their fault, right? They wanted it. And again, if this stuff is legit, oh man, fuck them anyway. But by default, again, by its very nature, if people want to create a landscape where people are just they're just listened to, well, here's that's how you take it. Emily, thanks for the 10. A certain sweetness that it's Dan freaking Wooten, defender of self-righteous liars. Yeah, Dan freaking Wooten. I just such an ass. I mean, Dan, he can be by his very nature, he could be funny when he's going after folks, but you can tell like he would I could just see some of the things about being a coworker. Might not be fun. And then, about the other stuff. But anyway, so this came up. Dan Wooten will soon be exposed for the depraved essay and harassment of minors. Now, that doesn't actually reflect back to what is said here about younger male members of staff. So I wonder, unless they're bringing in like interns from, from high school or something they're trying to say. I'm not sure. Maybe that happens, or a really young intern from college. But even then, it doesn't say that. So I'm wondering, is this just a misapplication of what's said there, or not? But like I was saying before, I have to take it literally, and I have to believe that because it's an accusation, and by its very nature, listen and believe, baby, right? So, whoever is protecting him now will go down with him. No one permanently gets away with these things, especially when so many already know the truth. So, here's the clipping. Let me pull this up. I want to lock in on it. So, again, excuse me as I do this because I want you to be able to see it as best you can. I apologize. It takes me just a second. So this is the latest from, I'm reading their statement, and then I'm going to pull this up. This is the latest from Private Eye. FYI, not a mystery. They're talking about Dan Wooten. Please read the entire last paragraph. Now, what's fascinating about this, I don't think just the last paragraph is part of the context. I think there's more to it too. Because when you look at what's being stated here, this is talking about other folks that have been exposed. They have been fired for being, the very thing that people should be protected against, and the links to which places like the Daily Mail, who again, the Daily Mail has been running hardcore PR for some of the worst fucking people in the world. Again, remember, they were the outlet that promoted oh man, Amber Heard, she's leaving the state. She's leaving Hollywood. She's going out because she's still got career left. They've done this hardcore PR. And the other side of their hardcore PR was destroying a person's life. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, listen to this statement here. So now they're talking about, again, you can see the lead in. And then when we get here, this is the Wooten portion. So last year, a senior journalist on the Daily Mail was sacked after an internal investigation concluded that his sexual activity with a junior trainee whom he was supposed to be mentoring was inappropriate. When the Eye asked questions about this, again to the Daily Mail, we received a response from the paper's legal director. Of course, they always, again, these places, they have huge legal departments, legal directors, and the legal director told them that the matter was confidential. Okay. And listen to this next part. This it's such a farce coming from the Daily freaking Mail, and that it would, quote unquote, be deeply unfair if it were to print anything on the subject. So an outlet comes asking questions for the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail, they go further than saying, we can't comment on that. They're saying, if you write about this subject, we can't tell you anything about it, and it would be deeply unfair for you. The fucking hypocrisy to these, it's astounding to me. Like, what a trash fire. Then you get to the Dan Wooten part. So The pontificating of one particular pundit, however, has left former colleagues gobsmacked. I always like that word, by the way. That is not a word you ever see in the U.S. I've never ran across that in casual lingo. Is that something here's a question. I just want to know this real fast. I know this is a little diversion, but still I'm curious. So anybody in the UK, is that a word that you run across like like people just use? Or is it just something for print decor? I'm curious how often, because that's a cool word. I always like that word. Anyway, given his own past propensity for sexually harassing young male members of staff who worked for him, both inside and outside of the office. Yep, very often. See, that's awesome. I love that. That's cool. See, we need words like that I use the word, I'm in the US. Yeah, now people may use it. I've never ran across, maybe it's again more localized or something. Maybe that's not in the South, or we have a lot of colloquialisms that come up. I've never ran across that ever in a statement, so that's cool to know. The statement, though, about again, no name attached, but Dan Wooten sexually harassing young male members of staff who work for him, not who work for place, but they work for him as part of whatever is going on. I mean, that's crazy, both inside and outside of the office. So during work hours, I mean, you're not just talking about, outside calling up people. You're talking about this going on inside of the workplace itself, and you're going to have more accusation that sticks to that too. What's up, Viral Shorts? Thanks for that. Hey, Tug, I had to go off topic with the SAG or the SAG strike happening. Has include Johnny Depp after the Fran Drescher meltdown. There were some statements. So I'm trying. Stephen Deuters. That's what I'm thinking of. Stephen Deuters actually made a comment. We'll talk about an issue in just a minute. It was about Russia in his movie, and he made a couple of statements about some stuff that's there, and there have been a few other statements, but I mean, I'm not in the no. There are some actors that are still working, promoting, with him. He's not really doing U.S. promotions. I mean, he's outside of, so I don't see how a lot of that would really hit him with what's going on right now, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's any connection where, something could impact him as an actor. There are a lot of projects that are in the US that are still going forward. And again, what he's doing right now, I don't really see it impacting what he's doing. But again, that would be something. I think that would be something to follow up on. I'm not sure. I'm not sure with all of it. I think, like, again, there's been statements for what he is doing currently, clarifications on some stuff. So it's a good question, though. Members of the HR department, this continues, at his former employer openly admitted protecting him during investigations into his behavior. Like, think about that. HR openly admits about an employee that, yes, the company's stance on said employee. This tells you, you hear this about powerful employees all the time too. Normally when you hear this, it's not the face of a news broadcast or something. Although, I mean, there are some pretty big names that they become the face of it. And again, it becomes a numbers game. But usually, you hear about this more at executive levels, that than the faces of stuff. You used to hear about this in old Hollywood, and everything way back when. Maybe they just hide it better. Because, I mean, like I said, I know that these places and their journalist pals, they like to circle the wagons. But it's fascinating to hear about, again, members of HR saying, yeah, we definitely did. We protected this person during that, including at least one of which resulted in an employee being moved to another department to avoid his boss's attentions. That is bad news. If you've got to move an employee to another place, you haven't done anything about the issue. You've just taken one person out of the sideline. But again, that behavior, if it's being reported repeatedly, there's a big problem there, a very big problem. What's up, Glory? Thanks for the 5. Apparently, indie films actors can get special wager. There you go for SAG. I see saying SAG for SAG to film and promote their movies under special circumstances. Okay, there's a good answer for it. So I'd wondered with indie, with the independent attachment to it. Now, as far as again with Depp, I'm not sure how that works in all the way. Team Brittany, thanks for 10. Howdy, Tug. Something in the mail for Lug and Bugs. That's cool. Then a separate package coming afterwards. Put your relating P.O. box on notice. Awesome. That's cool. Thank you for that. Also, by the way, if for some reason, let me just note this since there's 1,000 people listening. I've been doing a project. It's like we have a lot of cactus, right? And people have been sending us some. I've been putting them on display, and it's cool to see like a visual reference to people that support the channel or the Johnny Depp support, whatever, So if you have a cactus or something different there, I mean, maybe it can be the same thing. Who cares? If you want to send like a clipping, clippings, you can take one from whatever, put it in the mail, name it, say where you're from. It can be anonymous too, but just let me know. Bam, that's cool. Let me pin this real quick. And Jen, thanks for the 10 months. Tug, love your talent, content, and your humor. It's a breath of fresh air. Listen to you and your channel. So glad to have found you all. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think we deal with some very horrible subjects. And I think there has to be a way of presenting it that's not. These can be soul crushing. And again, I mean, we're talking about a guy right here that, again, let's move somebody to a different area of a workplace. Or the other part, a number of bullying complaints against the same man resulted in staff leaving with payouts. Again, how much money? I'm curious how much money in payouts we're talking about there. How many employees would we be discussing? I mean, that's a heck of an accusation there. Now, asked by the eye if these also involved non-disclosure agreements in 2018. Now, I think this is important, by the way, that date, for several reasons. First of all, we were talking about at the very beginning. We were talking about that wife rhymes with Walmart greeter, that article, the UK outline, that comes up because of things that happened in 2018. That is the height of Me Too. But the references, when Dan Wooten decides to get involved, it's because of the attention that happened from stuff in 2018. So while all of that is going on, you have Dan Wooten saying, yeah, this is a thing I want to get involved in. Meanwhile, there are allegations here saying that there were non-disclosure agreements with staff members from that same time period, while he's destroying other people's life and he's grandstanding. And maybe that's the reason too. If there's a lot of smoke because there's a fire, well, I guess you could set something else ablaze. I mean, that's one way. Hide your arson by making other fires, accusing other people of it. That's just crazy. But the spokesman for the company said, of course, I'm afraid we're going to have to decline to comment. Now, if there's a non-disclosure agreement by its very nature, they would say that. But it does suggest some pretty bad stuff there, right? Now, there's another, give me 1 second. There's another thing that's come up as well. This has started to hop along too. So give me a second. Let me pull this one up too. Now here we have Sunburn sat on another Great scoop. So they're talking about the sun, the sunburn. They've set on another great scoop here. So the Sun have been having a hell of a time trying to retrofit a public interest to their Hugh Edwards story, pulling up any old incident of workplace misconduct they can find to pin on him now that the police are saying there's no evidence of any crime. It's a shame they put themselves in this position because if all they wanted was a story about a news broadcaster who made life uncomfortable for colleagues by sending them inappropriate messages, they'd have a really juicy one much closer to home. Now, again, I've seen a lot of commentary thrown out about Dan Wooten in the past, but I've never seen this much stuff getting that close to home. You know what I mean? Hey, Steph, thank you for that gifted membership, by the way. Thank you. I've never seen Dan Wooten actually get into the crosshairs where people are like, yeah, and to see the Sun called out, I think it's beautiful too. The Sun that has gone out of their way to damage, defame, and destroy. To say like, hey, if you're trying to do all of this stuff, if you're trying to look for something juicy and to say, oh, look at that monster over there, maybe you should look in your own rank and file. I mean, that's one heck of a statement, right? But it will involve asking some difficult questions, but they have an excellent starting lead. They should still have all the Dan Wooten old HR files stashed away somewhere. So maybe they could start there. There's bullying allegations, NDAs, even a few payoffs they could get the guys in finance to dredge back up. While they're doing that, they could look into why Dan Wooten kept getting promoted while some of those who lodged complaints, they got sidelined. Now that would be a very serious problem, by the way. If a company retaliates against you because you lodged a complaint with HR, especially in this day and age, if you're talking about, if you're talking about forcing people to sign NDAs, keeping them on, but promoting Wooten, giving him this meteoric rise while silencing and shelving others, yeah, that's a real problem. And that happens, by the way. It very much does. It happens because, people that are, I'm talking about people that make credible allegations. I mean, there are non-credible ones, obviously, but if they're credible allegations, oftentimes that person is seen again as a troublemaker. They are not doing what is in the best interest of the company, which is a horrible way to think about that. But honestly, I mean, this Lord, I can only imagine what kind of hellhole that would be there. Former colleagues seem perfectly willing to chat, but hey, we shouldn't be doing their jobs for them. Just start pulling at the thread. See what you find. That's fascinating stuff again to see written up anywhere. So then on top of that, we have the Dan Wooten stuff, everything that is trending with Dan Wooten. And that gets 1 second here. Now, now as part of that, Dan Wooten, actually, I'm going to skip this one. It has an address, but I want to read this to you, okay? I'm not going to show this because it's got an address involved, and this platform hates it if you show any kind of address. Bad vibes, thanks for the 5. I think the political correctness with the UK and the willingness of Wooten to abuse connections is worth investigating. And indeed, I would say yes, very much so. So GB News, GBN, they came out with a statement that said, our presenter Dan Wooten will be taking time off from the channel. It is unknown how long Dan will be away. We would like our fantastic viewers to respect his privacy at that time. Get well soon. And people are like, that's pretty ironic considering, right? So along with that, you have other statements too, about Dan Wooten, asking, Like, why is Dan Wooten so silent? Why aren't they all saying anything? And people are pointing out again, Carolyn Flack. We're talking about, again, there's a lot of conversation about this. A lot of conversation about Dan Wooten. Dan Wooten apparently is deleting a lot of his statements too. He's going through and purging his timeline, which is fascinating as well, because, when you take this in context, when you have this flood coming up and then somebody starts to scrub everything associated with it, man, that's usually not a byproduct of, something that is being mistimed. Give me 1 second there. I want to mark that. It's actually not a timing thing. It's that looks a little weird. That's usually a sign that something bad is going on. But I mean, you see, thank you too for anybody that I've passed that's shared my video on there. Again, he was a Depp accuser exposed, getting accused. So, and he was a main accuser. He was, honestly, you have AH, of course, as the accuser for JD. But beyond that, you have, I mean, just look at this. Like, it is so bad. It's bad. It just keeps going. And it causes trending. You see this right here. He's in the trending headlines. But I mean, he's probably done. I'm gonna mark that one too. Give me a second. Bookmark. That's how you bookmark. If you're curious and you wonder how that happens. I mean, there's a lot though. People are pointing out, he's gotten flagged before about, the flower thing and him just, being fake. It's just so crazy. And there are people that back Dan Wooten, of course, in this. There are many of them out there, many fans of Wooten. There are also many people that oppose, listen, and believe. And again, I understand that. If you step up and that's your thing, I've just, for my stance on this kind of stuff, I'm playing by their rules. I'm not canceling. They should cancel themselves. Like, that's the way it should be. Again, if you wanted the landscape, because, it goes like this. It's like clockwork. When you see somebody that ends up getting accused that themselves has been a major accuser of other people, they're like, no. We need to look at the evidence. It was like, well, the evidence before didn't matter. Getting in contact with the other party, or maybe looking at, filings and seeing what went on, actually investigating that. Oh no. And, by its own nature, a tabloid talking head is not going to actually go in and investigate anything anyway. They're terrible about that. But this, I mean, some of them are well beyond. Now, as far as the as far as the accusations for Dan Wooten, I mean, so here's again, Wooten. You had a court hearing on all of that and stuff with Carolyn Flack. So check this stuff out. I want to show you this here too, because Dan doesn't like being accused of things. Apparently, he can accuse other people, but no. So, Carolyn Flack's ex-fiance accuses Dan Wooten of being a murderer. Court hears. Former reality TV contestant Andrew Brady pleads guilty to harassment. So, the former fiance accused Dan Wooten of being a murderer and a sex offender. A judge in Sheffield heard how Brady compared Wooten, now a columnist for Mail Online, to the former Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein in a series of messages sent over a period of more than 2 months. Brady said he had a crusade against Wooten. Now, this, again, if you think about what Wooten himself did, writing article, I find this so jacked up, because Wooten himself went out and put other people on trial. He messaged, he sent out multiple tweets about Depp, but they weren't aimed at Depp. They were aimed at other people trying to destroy his job. And he was calling them all kinds of stuff. Again, he made that list for J.K. Rowling. So, he doesn't like it when he gets in the crosshairs. Like I said, I'd find it fascinating for the people who back accusation culture. They don't like to be accused, huh? Isn't that weird? So Brady said he had a crusade against Wooten and posted on social media, "I feel like getting rid of him once and for all." He said his intention was to end Wooten's career, deal with it, and repeatedly said he wanted to see him jailed. So on Tuesday, he pleads guilty to one count of harassment. Be sentenced. I don't know what the sentence was. He originally pleaded not guilty to the more serious charge of putting him in fear of violence. It was set for a week-long trial. He ended up pleading guilty. The prosecutor here told the court that Wooten had been consulted about Brady's decision to plead guilty to a lesser charge of harassment, bring the legal proceeds to the end. She said that Dan Wooten simply wanted the course of conduct to end. The court had previously heard about Brady's online comments about Wooten. They began the first anniversary of Flack's death, 2021. It included threatening messages sent, expressing the desire to matters to be settled by violence. I would be pissed, by the way, if I felt that somebody drove some. I wouldn't. I wouldn't warn them. But if you drove somebody that I cared about to their end, and I truly believe that. Could you imagine turning on the TV and seeing the person that caused one of your significant, a person that you care about or your significant other, that caused them to end themselves? Could you imagine turning on the TV or going online and seeing their smug fucking face there every day? And then, of course, I'm sure they had heard all the other allegations and stuff. I mean, just... I'm not encouraging, by the way, anybody to retaliate or react. Again, there's nothing that's going to come positive with that. But isn't it fascinating, again? Wooten himself, like he led an army to destroy somebody in the height of Me Too, knowing what that does, knowing what the fuck that'll do. And that's not just a way to end a career. That's a way to end somebody, period. Because how people, how prisoners react to certain types of offenders. You know that in prison, I mean, again, we talk about prison justice. So even they, and again, these allegations that Wooten made, these are criminal investigation, but he hid behind the skirt of Amber Heard because he's a fucking coward. Because that's what it is. And he can't really say what he wants. He can't really put that. And then a few years later, though, he's in the crosshairs. Screw him. But his lawyer had said, freedom of expression against a public figure who was very keen to put private matters into the public domain. And that's true, too. I mean, that would have been, he hated Dan Wooten because Dan Wooten is very keen on taking things that are private and making them public. So as far as your recourse about that, as far as your reaction to that, well, he's saying that's my freedom of speech. Heather, thanks for the tip. The footage on the bottom is interesting. What footage here? So Judge Richard told Brady, "I am pleased that this case has at least been resolved. Sentencing, I don't know what the sentencing was. If anybody knows, tell me in the comments right now, if you would, please. I want to know." But I remember all that happening. I actually remember when all of that came up, because there were some very public statements, and it goes back to that whole idea of litigiousness. using the courts. So Dan Wooten, it'll be curious to see what happens with him. It will be very curious to see if he ends up undone. Now, there's one other matter that I want to bring up because this has been a PR matter, and I think that this is actually ridiculous when it comes up, but it's, give me one second. So there's been this crazy narrative going around where people have been pushing this idea that JD, here we are. I found this. All right. So there's been this Russian narrative. All right. This is absolutely debunked here. I think it's worth noting because this has been pushed all over social media. Take care. See you soon. Johnny Depp addresses the Russians in a video greeting. Russian audiences, now again, this has been debunked, just to make that clear. Russian audiences were greeted by the Hollywood actor prior to the film. Of course, you know it's filmed now in Moscow. In the film, the actor plays the role of King Louis XV. Earlier information appeared in Russian media that JD would visit Moscow this fall. Allegedly, he is set to record a song with local musicians, $370,000 fee, and would be given a tour of the Russian Federation. Now, again, this has been corrected because in the interview, they took and they mistranslated part of it. They were saying, that he all of this comes up, this whole conspiracy theory comes up because a translation supposedly was take care, see you soon. And really the translation was not that. It was take care. And you had Stephen Duders actually was tagged into this and was asked about it. It's amazing, like, what will fucking get you canceled these days? I mean, it is. It is absolutely crazy. It is like an insane propagandist minefield. Where, yeah, and again, there is a huge it's still an ongoing PR craze. But this was the new thing, and a lot of people just buy in. They don't have to really do any investigation because if you can convince the world that you back whatever enemy these days, if you can tell people they're Yahtzees, of course, but on top of that, well, he stands with the Russians. Or if you can convince them they're sexist, racist, maybe he's a phobe here. Oh, politically, he doesn't stand. Again, there's a million different ways to cancel a person. And a lot of people, they will not look into the context whatsoever. But Duders was tagged in, asked about, hey, what's going on with that? Is that true? If so, it's a bad move at the moment. And it was like, no, it was a video made for the global release of the film. There are not going to be any visits to Russia. Now, the narrative changed right after that. And I found this to be fascinating too, because right after that was clarified, this became, somebody sets this straight. I actually clipped them for this. Give me a second. But then the narrative became, well, his movie is going to be in Russia anyway. That by itself, that's terrible. Yeah, when you release a movie anywhere, and again, that's what this person's saying. They're clarifying this. This is not they're making that narrative. But when you release a movie worldwide, it goes worldwide. And many companies out there, they do that. You can see, again, look at the listing there. You have Fast and Furious movies. If Aquaman dropped, it would end up there. I mean, you're going to have Little Mermaid, all this stuff. It ends up showing. But the goalposts kept moving. It was fascinating how somehow in some way, this is yet another way. First, it was didn't translate correctly. It was also a video that was set for the global release, so it wasn't even a brand new thing, it was something older. It just never ends. Never ends, and I haven't even looked for media on this, but I would not be surprised if there's media on it too. Because it fits into the narrative that they've always promoted. You know, the narrative where they go after not just JD, but they've always gone after Adam Waldman. You know, they've always said that he was an agent of Russia, and that was always a crazy narrative. I mean, if you look up the cases that he's involved in, oftentimes, like he would deal with international cases, but he was actually working with the U.S. trying to get something done on behalf of the US, and that somehow makes you an agent of, this other place. I mean, it's just it never ends. It never ends. Like I said, it tells you after a while, it's not about pursuing truth. It's not about watching fallout or a lack thereof. At the end of the day, it's just about crazy, insane weirdos trying to burn lives down. I mean, they do it all the time. What's up, Jen? Thanks for the 5. Ghost? Yeah, exactly. Yes, indeed. Thank you, by the way. I don't know. I look at this stuff again every single day. It's a brand new. Some of it, I mean, we have. I did see. Hey, you want to see something funny? You actually want to see something funny before I end? Give me 1 second. So I was watching. Apparently, being one of the crazies out there, it's not very rewarding financially. Check this out. I got to mail this to myself real quick, okay? So, but I want you to see this. This is really funny. So, apparently, it's not rewarding to the point that you have to beg for coffee money. I just thought this was so funny. I also think it's funny, like, so the AHers have always complained about people making money. Oh my God, those people, they made money on the trial. Well, meanwhile, they beg people for money. So check this out. Give me 1 second. I'm mailing it to myself. I have to open up the 2 tweets, but I do think this is really hilarious. I saw somebody posting about this. I always get a laugh out of the hypocritical shit, especially from people that are like, oh my God, you made so many videos, that umbrella guy. And I'm like, all you do is sit online and fucking talk about these people. You talk about Depp. You talk about fucking, you talk about like horrible shit. You talk about her all the time, but oh my God, you made the video. So check this out. This is really funny. So this starts out with a plea for, here it is, for a few dollars. I know I'm going to get abused by a bunch of deppies for this, but I'm cleaning my apartment today and struggling with burnout, and I could really use an iced coffee. I'm like, well, if you could use iced coffee, get a fucking job then. Jeez. I thought this was bad, by the way. I thought this was manipulation over, I thought this was profiteering off of somebody's horrible misfortune, Especially, I mean, by their name by itself. Leave hurt alone. If you'd like to buy me one or contribute to my costs or give me a belated birthday present even, here's my comp is here. I could use some help. I don't like asking because the harassment always picks up when I do. Then it gets better. Some of the harassment I've received, the audacity of asking some of my mutuals for some Goodwill iced coffee money. Oh my God. They're posting and laughing at me. Like, all of the Deppy YouTubers and law tubers made hundreds of thousands of dollars and beg for donations. I'm like, I don't have to beg for donations. People like your channel, they'll support the shit. They do that. That's how it works. People support the things that they like. And apparently, they don't like you enough to give you a fucking iced coffee. I just love it. I love it because of all this stupid in there. These are the same people that, so I never did a video on this, and I really should. I've got to one day. They decided they thought it would be a cool PR stunt to get a plane to tow a banner with hashtag I stand with Amber Heard. Now, they did that, and they were like, "Yay, bravo for us. That's such a great message. Look, it's flying over. By the way, here's our GoFundMe. Can you pay $1,700 off that we incurred his debt?" Oh my gosh, good stuff. Heather, thanks for the 5 there. Twitter is paying content creators. You should look into this. Seems like a good moneymaker. Yeah, Elon Musk won't. He will only monetize the political pundits these days. So yeah, I actually I've tried for monetization, like many people, like Geeks and Gamers and other places, and we don't get a no. By the way, it just sits. So Elon Musk sits around and promises this as part of Twitter Blue. He's been like, "Oh, monetization, da da da." Yeah, they never like. I think I applied 18 months ago. And if you're at Twitter, I'm like, what the heck is going on? You know what Twitter support tells you? That's not our department. They'll look at it soon enough. So it's so ridiculous. It's the political talking heads, though. I mean, honestly, what Elon has found that the one thing that drives traffic for him is people furthering the divide in politics and wanting to end each other. He's found, and it's true, it works very well. People, they get into their nice little echo chamber and they hate the other side for whatever, whatever thing that they perceive as today's slide. And there's always a new one. There are usually several throughout the day, but it deepens that divide. And I find that really interesting considering one of the things with Twitter, remember, old ownership was called out because of the stuff that they were doing attached to politics, the malfeasance, and more. They've turned it into a reward system for driving traffic off of just making people want to destroy one another. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to watch. But yeah, Twitter won't review. They won't review most people under like a million subscribers. And even then, I think anybody that just isn't a hardcore simp of Twitter, like, again, you can like Elon Musk, you can like what's there, you can think he's done better for it. I personally think it's the same platform. I think it's the same mess. But if you think that, that's fine. But if you criticize, if you don't, let's walk lockstep. I don't think you'll ever get monetized. That's just my opinion on it. Yeah, I saw some of that. I saw, and I saw some of the accounts that were bragging about how much money they made. And I was thinking about what they usually post. It's usually their political shills. Some of them are indeed political shills. I mean, that's exactly what they are. Like, they're paid. A few of them have been exposed as being paid by parties to do stuff. And now they're just getting another paycheck to bring that stuff that they were doing over. It's just really strange how that works. It's not, I don't know. I kind of, I like being able to argue and, have fun and laugh at people on social media. At the same time, one of the things I do hate is this furthering divide, especially over politics. I mean, we have real problems out there, and people will, they'll argue over whether or not the grass is green. How to chew bubble gum. Oh my God, is that how you eat corn on the cob? Oh no, our side says no. And I mean, it just goes on. So, Heather, thanks for the tune there. This started in February. Yeah, 18 months, like I said, 18 months setting without an answer. It just sits there. It's like awaiting. And many people have experienced. It's not just like one or two people. There are a lot of people. A lot of the accounts that again have been reviewed. Like they won't even review them. Again, they're not turning down folks. They won't even review the accounts to give them, like, you'll notice a lot of people, like if you look up subscriptions, which is part of monetization for it, it's not noted. Now, the engagement rate, I believe, has to be around 3 million impressions. I get 3 million impressions, by the way. And I do that with I don't particularly like I like posting as long as I'm goofing off. And I've been posting. Oh, so by the way, here's some positive news. Let's talk about positive stuff for real quick. So one of the positives that I've mentioned before, getting in better shape. I think that is a very important thing. So look at that awesome picture. I'm going to throw this in here again. I showed this yesterday. Dead punk. I made this. It's cool. Bam. Look at that there. But every day, 4 miles. Bam. And that's not like I walk that, throughout the day. That's just like a morning thing. I've been trying to do that every day to try to get in better shape, so I don't fall apart. I love that picture though. Check that out. I got a little iPod Nano that I walk around with. I love the freaking shirt. You don't need a permit to own these guns, baby. Dead Pug is hilarious. He's working on something with all of that, Heather, thanks for too. I should have checked into it more. No, it's not nothing. No, I don't mean that negatively. When I talked about that, like for sure, you're like, hey, this is a great thing. You should do it. And you're right. That would be a great thing. You're right, 100%. And I appreciate, for all you folks, like when we discuss, I think I should say this too. When we discuss something, if I note something there, it's kind of like talking with friends. I mean, a lot of us have seen a lot of crazy. We've seen a lot of craziness, a lot of folks trying to cancel and more. So when you bring up stuff like that, the purpose is a good one. So I do appreciate the heck out of it. It's just the clarification on it, because a lot of people don't know that. They don't, because at the you even had one of the people that's supposed to be over that saying, "Oh, well, you're having a problem with subscriptions. Note that, make a comment under this and we'll review it." So a lot of people did that. And all of the people that I saw there, I was curious. So I bookmarked a bunch of their comments, and I noticed none of them had still been reviewed. Like I said, it's nuts. But I think this is, like I said, I've been trying for a baseline in the morning of 4 freaking miles. I'm trying to get in good shape. I've been doing this for a few weeks. And what I've noticed is I don't get tired. So I have cut. One of the things in the U.S., portion control is terrible. So I've portion control myself. Just change what you eat. But also, I mean, get out and do. Like one of the beer bug, one of its problems, the beer bug itself wasn't the problem. The beer bug was a good excuse to have problems. We became more isolated. You had gym shutdowns, and it just gave us excuses, and it made it hard, and a lot of people, they don't have time in their days. They don't make time for self. And part of making time for self is making sure that, you maximize health. It's strange in this day and age too. Like, this is no joke. If you look through the media, they talk about how fitness is racist somehow. Now, I scratch my head at some of the statements. They say, "Oh, look at all those right wingers." They're monster. They always refer to. Look at them. They like to work out. Yeah, a lot of people, do. That's It goes back to that state I was talking about yesterday. So, and I've had this stuck in my head. So again, this is why I bring this up more than once. There's a movie from the 1990s, I believe 1997, called The Edge. It stars Anthony Hopkins. I, again, can never remember the man's name. I will butcher it anyway. But Michael from Lost, he's also the head actor right now in that show Fear. Love him as an actor. I'm just butcher his name. And it had Alec Baldwin when he was younger. He was still probably insufferable, but he's become very insufferable as he's aged. Well, in that, they end up crashing in the wilderness. They're pursued by a bear, wants to kill them. And there's a statement that they keep bringing up over and over. They keep saying, how do people, what do people die from in the woods? Shame. And they showed a book in that, and the book actually did exist. So I looked at this a long time ago, but for some reason, I've had this stuck in my head lately, like when thinking about anything about moving forward. So the statement on this in the book is people die of shame in the wilds because they can't stop judging about how they got lost. And instead of sitting still and being mindful of where they actually are and where they have been, shame spins them in a circle and where they wish they were. Shame keeps them from finding the way out. And I think, like, when you think about that, that's actually very motivational in anything, because a lot of times people, they sit in the same circumstances because they're ashamed of how they got there. And, of course, like there are physical factors that will keep you lost, and you end up having a problem, obviously, in the wilderness. But some people just sit there. And again, they're like, it makes sense when you think about it. How did I get here? It's a mental thing. It's not, how do I get out of this? How do I keep moving forward? People get stuck in that moment. I don't know. I've just had that stuck in my head lately. And I think that's that's kind of a profound idea. It shapes to all things, and it should motivate, Don't get stuck in the wilderness. Walk your happy ass out. All right, last thing. I've been talking about the cactus thing. I pinned tweet. I'll show you. Like, I had a person send one from Florida. It was a clipping, just of a regular type cactus. Anytime come in, they said they didn't mind that noted they were from Florida, but not to say who it was. I was like, okay, fair enough. So to remember that they're from Florida, I put it in my little friend here, I put that one together. I thought that was kind of cool, That's a little shout out for them. But also on top of that, I had Manic Malice sent these. I think they are freaking cool. I wanted some of these so bad because they're the weirdest little cactuses I've ever seen. They're cool. I like how they look. Now, what this does, honestly, the point in this, I was having a talk with my daughter the other day. We were looking around, and we're talking about YouTube and how, if you look at the chats, people are from everywhere. I saw this really well in the Depp trial. Because I'd be like, hey, where's everybody from? Be from all over the world. Well, I thought it would be fun to have a visual reference, say where people are from. And like I said, these type of plants, you can send them anywhere. You can have basic ones, and it doesn't have to be like necessarily a quote unquote cactus, like that type succulents. Like they'll weather anything. It's hard to kill them too. So I like dealing with them. I don't want you to send something and be like, hey, this is a reference point for you. Oh, it died. No. So these are totem cactuses. And you can see, how the designs here, once they get bigger, especially the designs, they start to look like they'll look like faces sometimes. So they look like a totem pole, as they get taller. I've never seen one in real life. So this is Manic. This is Malice. I think that's cool. So I labeled them up. And, again, we've had so many. You can see like the little glow. That's a real cactus, by the way. That's a gem cactus. You'll see them sometimes and people think they're fake. They'll end up. This one actually came from a house that was being cleaned out. Somebody had left it behind, and some people were tossing it in the garbage. They thought it was a fake plant, but it wasn't. It's a real plant. There's a bunch of them. You can see already. Now, some of these are already mine. Some of them have been sent. You can see like down the way. I'm setting up a place to put them all out. But this is like in direct sunlight out in front. Look at all those. It'd be cool. Fill up the whole area with them. So anyway, if you want to take part in that, you can. There's a P.O. box attached to the top. It's a P.O. Box 257, McMinnville, Tennessee, 37111. Very easy to remember. Wow, wow, wow. 257 is easy to remember too. So, it's like the weapon, 357, but minus 100. So anyway, I'm going to end here. I think this has been a very eye-opening live stream. I think the message in this live stream should be careful what you wish for, because one day, if you wish to create a culture where, again, accusation reigns supreme, don't be surprised when you accuse other people that nobody stands with you. Yeah, I'd be one of the first people to stand up and say, hey, where is the proof to all of this? But with Dan Wooten, no. Because Dan Wooten set the stage. Again, his own rules. So it shouldn't be up to me to ask for clarification. Dan Wooten should just drop on the proverbial sword and say, no career, no nothing. Because again, he's accused, and that makes it real. And don't think, there are a lot of people that think in that moment they can't be, I see, I've actually known a female one time that was like, I don't even care about crap like that because I'll never be accused. You're like, I don't think you can't be. And if you are, again, as society changes, as we introduce more positives, as we get to the point where we are more accepting, maybe that's the wrong word. Some people aren't accepting, maybe more tolerant to a degree, at least societally, of lifestyles that they deviate from the social norm, the perceived norm. As we see more and more acceptance of people and realize that people are just people, that's a big positive. But the negative that comes from people thinking that they were immune to being canceled, again, when you break down those barriers, some folks have weaponized those barriers. And again, they always thought they would be immune. As long as they are the canceler, or they would never be the cancelee. They also, if the Dan Wooten stuff doesn't stick, by the way, I have seen a few glaring examples of male victims coming out and accusing somebody that is a listening believer. I saw that happen in the anime industry, in the voiceover, the people who put dubs down. I saw one prominent one have minors come out and accuse them. And not only did they immediately go away from listen and believe, they were like, no, I'm going to take legal action. But on top of that, the companies did nothing. They had fired other people for the same type of stuff. But you've seen that before. You've seen it with Warner Brothers. You saw that with Amber Heard, Ezra Miller. Again, you see them. They selectively decide based on a number of factors. But as time goes forward, I think people, as you punish companies for this kind of stuff, as you punish the Warners, they lose billions because movies crash and they continue to crash. Again, like The Flash is going to lose hundreds of thousands or hundreds of millions of dollars rather because of the controversy associated there. You're going to have another 100, I would say a couple of 100 million, depending on how advertising goes with Aquaman. I've seen, what's really weird too. Remember that Wonka is going to be released 5 days before Aquaman 2. Wonka is already kicking in all of the PR for their show. They're doing all of the advertisements, everything else. Some people are like, I don't want to say that. I actually like Timothée Chalamet. I think he's a good actor. I think the Wonka, I'll check out a prequel, see what's there. But it's fascinating. They kicked off a movie that 5 days comes out before. First of all, it's a Warner versus Warner movie, which is a very odd thing. Anyhow, you usually don't do that in-house. You don't put one of your movies to compete with another of your movies. But on top of that, you've already seen the trailer and everything for one of them, and the other one is just silent. Interesting, huh? Anyway, John, what's up, John? I was looking into that coffee thing too. I'm going to set that up this weekend, by the way. So I appreciate you talking about that too. Never heard of Dan Wooten until you started covering him, but apparently he had a go at Victoria Beckham in 2019. Yeah, he's gone at a bunch of people. I was looking at some of the, like another person said, Dan Wooten is a Perez Hilton type. It's a gossip columnist that ended up getting bigger and bigger, because of some of the names and the platform. And some of the other platforms with association. You're talking about gossip columnists, and some of them are particularly bad. They're particularly nasty. One of the things people say they don't like the nasty and the vitriol. They're like, no, I don't like that. Yeah, a lot of people do. A lot of people, not everybody, mind you, but a lot of people do. They support it. And, it ends up selling. It sells very well, by the way. Sells well enough to allegedly buy cover-ups. But anyway, all right. Well, I'm going to end here. I think it's been a good live stream. Had a lot of fun. Again, I'm going to leave this one up, I think, see what happens with it. But I don't know. Tomorrow, we'll see what comes up. There's still some pretty good videos to make. I'll see if I have time with one. I got a bunch of stuff. If I don't get to do that one, we'll do a live stream maybe Saturday. Because I got something big that I've been cooking up, but it's taking me a moment because I want to make sure it's right. But it's bad. It's bad business. Anyway, I'll catch you folks later though. See ya.